business in Japan and abroad. Jim's lucky day. Jim Fulton, a young Englishman, is trying to get a job in a Japanese company. In the interview,
would you like to sit down?
Thank you.
Do you have a good command of Japanese?
I can read better than I can speak.
Where did you study?
In a polytechnic.
Is that a university?
No, it isn't, in the strict sense of the term.
What do you mean?
It's one type of further education we can pursue after secondary school.
I see. Why do you want to work for our company, Mr. Fulton?
Well, for several reasons. First, I'm very impressed with the high quality of your products. Second, you've developed a unique system using robots.
Why, thank you.
Towards the end of the interview,
well, Mr. Fulton, thank you very much for coming. It was very pleasant talking to you.
The pleasure's mine, sir. May I ask how soon I'll be notified?
I'm afraid I can't answer that now, but we'll call you. It won't be necessary for you to call us.
A few days later, there's a call for Jim from the company.
Hello, may I speak to Mr. Fulton?
Speaking.
This is Toshio Wada, the personnel manager of JATC. I have good news.
Oh?
Your application has just been approved. You got the job.
Oh, thank you very much. This is my lucky day.
The land of the rising yen. Jim Fulton is assigned to the overseas division of JATC. He starts off working for Mr. Miyata.
Okay. Come this way, Jim. This is your desk. You'll share this office with these two people, okay?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Miyata.
I'd like you to meet Alice Okada and Hiro Nomura, Jim Fulton.
After the introduction,
Your job for the first couple of months will be to go through all of the English correspondence and other English documents coming into this division.
You mean just to read them or to revise them?
Both, actually. We're hoping it will help you familiarize yourself with the kind of work we do.
All right. I think I understand.
And as you may know, there'll be a reception for the new members of the staff this evening at 6 o'clock. I hope you will attend.
I'm looking forward to it.
You may have to make a speech.
Okay.
Alice, will you take him to see Miss Yamada? His name cards should be ready.
Sure. Oh, I didn't know the company prepared the name cards for us. That's why everybody has one.
later at the reception,
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to introduce James Fulton. He's assigned to the Overseas Division. Mr. Fulton?
Thank you. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to tell all of you how very much I'm looking forward to working with you. I consider it my good fortune to be employed by a company which is part of the land of the rising yen. Thank you.
business with pleasure. One late afternoon in Mr. Miyata's office.
Jim, are you doing anything after work today?
I have an appointment, but it's not very important.
I'd appreciate it if you could come along with me.
Is it something to do with work?
Yes and no. We're going to have dinner with some business associates.
Yes.
We'll be mixing business with pleasure. We may end up concluding a negotiation, or we may just have fun talking.
Is there anything special I should keep in mind?
Well, there's no cut-and-dried rule. But usually we start off by sizing each other up.
I see. Then you sound them out on whatever you have in mind.
That's right. So, you think you'll be able to join us?
Yes, of course.
Later at the restaurant.
Back to talking about the possibility of a joint venture. How do you look at it, Mr. Roberts?
Frankly, I'd never considered it until you mentioned it this evening. What do you think, Mr. Miyata?
What do I think about what?
About the joint venture?
Oh, would you like more beer?
Yes, thank you.
Technically, I think it's possible, isn't it?
I've heard rumors that JST and the French company FSM are considering it.
Well, we certainly don't want them to corner the international market, do we?
Let's do a little more groundwork and discuss it again.
Just then, Jim calls the waitress.
Waitress! It looks like there's hair in my soup.
Don't talk so loud, please. What if everyone wants some? It's not air, it's seaweed.
Business in Japan and abroad. The low 70s. This afternoon, Jim has been attending a staff meeting. Back in his office.
Has the meeting been adjourned?
Yes, it has.
How was it, Jim?
Well, sometimes I couldn't really understand what was going on.
Oh?
For example, there was a very awkward silence at the beginning of the meeting. I wonder why.
Well, breaking the ice among Japanese isn't simple sometimes, is it, Hiro?
Particularly in a formal situation, no, it isn't.
Does that have anything to do with seniority?
Partly, yes. It might be considered bad manners to start expressing your opinion before senior members do.
Then I was right. That's what I guessed.
At that point, Mr. Miyata walks in.
Oh, I should have done a lot more prior to the meeting to get support for our proposal. It was turned down.
You mean nemawashi?
Right.
What does that mean, literally?
It means to dig around the root of a tree before transplanting it.
So perhaps you can understand why we use it to mean maneuvering behind the scenes. Well, let's forget it. You know, Jim, someone said the modern executive talks golf all morning in the office and business all afternoon on the golf links. Of course you play golf, Jim?
Though he doesn't, he wants to please Mr. Miyata.
Yes, I do.
You must be good. I don't mind playing even on the coldest day in winter. I usually play in the low 70s myself.
Well, I give up if it gets colder than that.
Business in Japan and abroad. A trip to Hong Kong. This week, we find Jim being sent to Hong Kong on business. In Mr. Miyata's office.
Hello, Jim. How are you doing?
Pretty well, thank you. What did you want to see me about?
A business trip to Hong Kong.
Oh, that sounds interesting. When would you like me to go?
Next week. It's rather urgent, I'm afraid. All right?
Yes, of course.
In Hong Kong, Jim is accompanied by a Chinese assistant.
This is the name and address of the agency I want to visit.
All right. It's on the Hong Kong side. We can go either by subway or by ferry.
I'd like to take the ferry. It's more fun, isn't it?
At the pier?
Let's take first class.
What's the difference?
It's only a little more expensive.
The view is fantastic. This is great.
You see the junk on the left?
Oh, yes. By the way, do people really live on a boat all their lives?
Yes, they do. If you want to see how they live, you have to go to Aberdeen.
Why don't we go when we finish work?
Good idea. I'll show you around in a boat.
At Aberdeen, in a small boat.
This reminds me of a famous film. You like movies?
I hardly ever go.
Oh, you shouldn't miss the chance to see a good movie. What about classical music?
I don't know much about it.
Oh, I never miss a chance to go to a concert.
Suddenly, their boat is capsized.
Help! I can't swim!
Hold on to me. Otherwise, you'll miss more than the chance to see a movie or a concert.
Business in Japan and abroad. The right foot. Today we find Jim meeting a client in Hong Kong. At the receptionist desk.
Good morning. May I help you?
Yes, my name is Jim Fulton from JATC Tokyo. I'd like to see Mr. Jung.
Do you have an appointment?
Yes, at 10:30.
Would you put down your name and the name of your firm here? I'll call his secretary.
Later in Mr. Jung's office.
You have a very nice office, Mr. Jung.
Thank you. How's the economic situation in Japan?
Well, it may appear to be thriving, but there are problems like everywhere else. How about Hong Kong?
I'm sure you know we've had a lot of trouble with inflation, but we're hoping to get it under control.
It would certainly make doing business easier, wouldn't it?
Well, Mr. Fulton, I think we'd better get down to business. As you probably know, we've had numerous letters of complaint about your latest model.
I see. What specifically is the trouble?
Fortunately, it doesn't seem to affect the primary function of the machine.
Can I see one of the faulty models?
Yes, of course. Here's one.
I'll try to find out the cause of the trouble.
I'm afraid you've shipped us inferior goods. Here's the report from our laboratory.
I'll need some time to look into this.
Certainly.
I'm sorry that our first meeting seems to have started off on the wrong foot.
Oh, don't worry. Since we have 2 feet, we can put the right one down next.
Business in Japan and abroad. It fluctuates. Today we find Jim back in Tokyo attending an international trade fair. At his company's exhibit...
What a good turnout!
Yes, this is a definite success, especially considering it's the first time.
We're lucky we're having nice weather.
If there had been a typhoon, it would have been disastrous.
And we're lucky the part-time workers we hired are doing a pretty good job.
Which items are of the greatest interest to prospective customers?
A lot of people seem to be looking at the desk computers, just as you predicted, Mr. Miyata.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. What about the word processors?
You'll have to ask Hiro about that. I think he's been keeping an eye on that area.
All right. I'll go and talk to him for a few minutes.
Later, we find Mr. Miyata talking with a buyer from abroad.
I want some information about your pocket calculators.
Yes? What would you like to know?
What's your share of the market?
I won't pretend that we're the biggest name in the business. We have about 10% of the market. But just take a look at these. I think you'll agree they're well designed, and you simply can't beat our prices.
How much are they?
That all depends on the quantity.
What if we ordered, say, 20,000?
Just a minute, and I'll give you an estimate. I'll have to check the exchange rate.
Oh, that again. You know, my wife says she never has to ask about my blood pressure.
Oh? Why is that?
She simply looks at the morning paper. It fluctuates according to the exchange rate.
Business in Japan and abroad. The Lion City. This morning, we find Jim back in Hong Kong making a phone call from his hotel room.
I'd like to place an overseas call to Tokyo. The number is 925-6478. The area code is 03.
Do you wish to speak to anyone in particular?
No, anyone at that number will do. I want to reverse the charges.
May I have your name, please?
Jim Fulton.
I'll ring you back when I get the call through.
Thank you.
In a few minutes.
Oh, hello, Jim. I'm glad you called, as I was just about to call you. How are things down there?
Not very good, I'm afraid. The problem seems to be more serious than we thought.
Oh, no. Well, in order to get more information, I've decided I want you to fly to Singapore first thing tomorrow morning.
All right.
The following day at the Changi Airport in Singapore.
Excuse me. Are you Mr. Fulton from JATC?
Yes, I am.
I'm Miss Tonga, the subsidiary, SATC. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
Did you have a good flight?
Yes, very smooth. Everything looks new and beautiful. When was this airport opened?
Just last summer. It's probably one of the most modern airports in Asia.
Later, in Ms. Tong's office.
We haven't had any complaints about this model, but as you were saying, it may be liable to a claim.
That's why you've been withholding shipment.
Yes, that's right.
Well, let's go after this thing directly and find out the real cause of the problem.
All I can say is, if you're going to take a tiger by its tail, you'd better be lion-hearted, Mr. Fulton.
What better place than in the Lion City?
Business in Japan and abroad. Sick of work. One morning in Mr. Miyata's office.
Mr. Miyata, there was a call from London yesterday. Mr. Lawrence wants to know what's happened to the new plant project. It's very difficult to be non-committal all the time. Can you tell me why it's taking so long to make a decision?
It's really quite simple. In Japan, we tend to reach a decision by consensus, and that naturally takes time.
You mean everybody's opinion has to be heard?
That's right. That's why there are so many meetings in the company.
Sometimes we do it without a meeting. That system is called ringi.
Oh, how does it work?
A written proposal is circulated among the executives concerned to get official approval.
That should be less time-consuming.
Anyway, once it's officially finalized, its implementation is very quick and efficient.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. There are very few hitches once things start moving.
Well, Jim, let's just tell Mr. Lawrence that we foresee no major problems, and it'll soon get off the ground.
May I ask how soon?
I would say in from 2 to 3 months.
Just then, Jiro, a newly employed part-timer, walks in.
I'm sorry I'm late.
I understand you weren't at work yesterday because you were sick.
Yes, sir.
Well, you didn't look very sick when I saw you at the racetrack yesterday afternoon. What do you have to say about that?
Oh, were you sick of work too?
Business in Japan and abroad. Leave your hat. This morning, the phone is ringing in Mr. Miyata's office.
Hello? Speaking. Oh, yes, Jim. I've been expecting your call. Any good news?
I don't know if it's good or bad, but something very important has come up.
Oh? What is it?
The investigating team from the laboratory has finally come to a conclusion, and it's a shocker. The faulty models are not ours.
What? You mean they're fakes?
Yes. The legal section has already asked the police to investigate.
A few days later, when Jim gets back to the office...
How did they find out they're fakes?
Because 2 models with the same serial number were turned in.
Well, there's not much we can do about it for the moment. I must say, though, I never thought a thing like this would happen.
Later, during a coffee break...
We're having an office Christmas party, as you know. Though it'll be catered, we still need some helping hands.
What needs to be done?
We're responsible for seeing that things go smoothly at the bar and the cloakroom.
No problem. We'll take care of everything.
I'll be on the lookout for gate crashers.
Yes, we had some last year. Oh, but please feel free to bring your family or a friend. And don't forget to bring presents to exchange.
On the day of the party...
Today's been so hectic.
We barely made it in time.
Who's going to be in charge of the cloakroom?
Jiro, I told him what to do, so don't worry.
As the first guest arrives...
Excuse me. Please leave your hat here, sir.
I don't have a hat.
Then I'm sorry, sir, but you can't go in. I was strictly instructed not to let anyone in who didn't leave his hat in the cloakroom.
Business in today's world. Late on Monday mornings. Mr. Goldberg, an American businessman, has come to Japan to see Mr. Kondo, sales manager of JRC. May I help you?
Yes. My name is Hugh Goldberg. I'd like to see Mr. Kondo.
There are 3 Kondos in the company. What's his first name, please?
Toshio.
Do you have an appointment?
Yes, at 10:30.
A few minutes later, in Mr. Kondo's office... Mr. Goldberg is here to see you?
Ask him to come in, please. you do, Mr. Goldberg? It's very nice of you to come.
How do you do, Mr. Kondo?
I'm pleased to meet you. This is my secretary, Kathy Marsh. Kathy, Mr. Goldberg from Moore & Thompson.
After the introduction,
Please sit down.
Thank you. You have a beautiful office. It's an ideal mixture of Japanese and Western decor.
I'm glad you like it.
Mr. Goldberg, would you like a cup of coffee or some Japanese tea?
Coffee with cream. No sugar, please. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Goldberg, how can I help you? I understand you're a friend of Angela Parker's.
Yes. She told me that you've just invented a robot that seems almost human and can do practically anything. We're very interested in it.
If it's true, it may even come in late on Monday mornings.
Never pay. Today we find Mr. Goldberg, an American businessman, visiting a factory north of Tokyo. On the way in the train...
Mr. Kondo, is this the bullet train? No, it isn't. But didn't you say we'd be taking one? Yes, I did. But this is a rapid connecting service between Ueno and Omiya, where the new bullet train leaves from. Oh, I see.
Later, on the bullet train...
It's very smooth and comfortable. How fast is the train going? About 250 kilometers per hour. So that's about 170 miles per hour. That's just incredible. It doesn't feel like we're going that fast, does it? No, it doesn't. If there's a speedometer we can check in the buffet car. Oh, is there?
After arriving at the factory, they're shown around by the plant manager, Ms. Oki.
let me take you to the automated section. This is it. Here's the robots doing almost all the work.
This is truly futuristic. What are they making?
They're assembling parts of a car.
I didn't know automation had come this far.
Back in Ms. Oki's office.
How did you like the tour?
Incredible. Those robots have just about replaced human beings. Using robots is a very effective way to cut down on labor costs. Yes, in order to survive, we must stay competitive.
Particularly during this recession. How's business in America?
Well, with our company, it couldn't be worse. Even our customers who never pay have stopped buying.
Business in today's world. Consistency. Mr. Kondo of JRC has arranged a business dinner to introduce Mr. Goldberg to Mr. Sayama, one of Mr. Kondo's clients. After the introduction...
Thank you for inviting me. I didn't expect to be having dinner with you.
This is typical Japanese business practice.
Yes, we often combine business with pleasure. That makes things nice.
Thank you.
This is the first time I've been to a Japanese restaurant. I like it very much.
I'm glad you do. Have you ever tried grilled eel, Mr. Goldberg? This place is known for it.
No, I haven't. Is it good? Yes, very. I'm sure you'll like it. Okay, I'll try some. As the old saying goes, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
After a little while...
Can I ask you a bit more about the robots?
By all means.
Besides cutting down on labor costs, what do you think are the advantages of using them?
Actually, there are quite a few. Needless to say, we can't work human beings around the clock the way we can robots.
Yes, we can have 24-hour production.
And another thing is that they are an enormous help in quality control. Human beings make mistakes, but they don't.
Yes, we can count on their consistency.
Actually, I have some employees who are as consistent as any robot.
Oh, do you?
Yes, particularly one I have in mind. He always makes mistakes.
Business in today's world. Not up to par. After the previous night's dinner, Mr. Goldberg is back at Mr. Kondo's office.
Good morning, Mr. Kondo. Good to see you again.
It's nice of you to come, Mr. Goldberg. Please sit down.
I've decided to take the big step.
It's not final, but here's a list I drew up of our requirements for a new plant using robots. I'd like a rough estimate.
All right. Let me introduce the person in charge of our cost analysis section.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Kathy, would you ask Roger to come in, please?
Yes, right away. Hello, is Roger there? Good. This is Kathy. Will you put him on, please?
Hi, Kathy. What can I do for you?
Mr. Condor wants to see you in his office now. I think it's about Mr. Goldberg.
I'll be right there.
After some discussion of the project,
I'll leave everything in Roger's hands.
I'll try and get an estimate to you as quickly as possible. Thank you. I'd appreciate that. By the way, do you have anything planned for this weekend, Mr. Goldberg? Nothing, except for doing some shopping for my family.
Would you like to go golfing with us?
Oh, that would be a nice break.
that weekend on the golf course,
This is a beautiful course. I bet you're a good golfer, Mr. Condo.
Well, in my case, it varies. When it's below 90, I'm neglecting my business. Above it, I'm neglecting my game.
You look a little tired today, Mr. Goldberg. To tell you the truth, I feel a little below par. I have a bit of a headache. Well, if your game is the same, I'm sure you'll feel much better